The academy on the edge of the Zithra Nebula stood like a fortress of steel and light, and the hum of engines echoed through the high towers where cadets trained day and night. Humans were rare in this place, and they drew attention wherever they went. Kayla, the youngest human cadet, stepped onto the training grounds for the first time, and she could feel the eyes of every alien on her weighing her down. She had trained for years on a death world where storms ripped through the land and predators hunted relentlessly. But here the alien's gaze felt heavier than any predator she had faced. Her boots struck the metal floor with precision, and her shoulders squared as the alien cadets whispered and laughed at her presence. Their voices were sharp and alien, and each word seemed to carry scorn. Kayla ignored them because she had learned early that humans survived by focusing on what they could control and letting the rest slide off like water from scales. The training hall was massive, with walls that glimmered faintly with energy shields, and in the center stood General Vrax, the most feared instructor in the entire academy. His armor glinted under the lights, and his eyes, small and hard, scanned the cadets like a predator seeking weakness. He paused when he saw Kayla, and a slow smirk crossed his face, as if he had already imagined humiliating her. She had been warned about him, but seeing him now in full authority made her muscles tense. She refused to show fear because fear gave power to the one who sought it. The first exercise began with simple combat drills, and Kayla moved with care, yet fluidity showing the years of conditioning in every step. The alien cadets flinched at her speed but laughed when she misstepped slightly and stumbled as she tried to mirror a complicated maneuver. Vrax's smirk widened, and he stepped forward, striking her hand to test her strength. She barely registered the pain before her instinct took over. She gritted her teeth and met his gaze with a fire that none of the aliens had ever seen. The hall went silent for a fraction of a second before alien laughter filled it again. They had never seen a human react with such calm defiance in the face of insult. Vrax raised a clawed hand and slapped her across the face to show dominance. The sound rang through the hall, and Kayla's head spun from the force. Her vision blurred for a heartbeat, and the laughter grew louder. Her cheeks burned not just from pain but from the humiliation of being singled out and mocked. She felt the sting, but she felt more the surge of anger that humans carried in moments of injustice. A small voice inside her whispered survival and revenge. She would show them what humans could do. The aliens expected submission, but Kayla tightened her fists and felt every muscle in her body awaken. The hall seemed to slow around her as she processed the situation. Her mind ran through everything she had learned, from death world survival to combat drills to reflex training. Nothing could prepare them for what humans carried inside them. She straightened her posture and raised her chin, her eyes locking onto General Vrax as if to say that the game had just begun. Alien cadets whispered to one another about the human who dared to meet the general's gaze. They had never met a species that refused to bow, and Kayla could feel their curiosity and fear mingling. She did not speak, she did not retreat, she merely stood ready, and the air seemed charged with anticipation around her. The instructors watched silently as a ripple of tension spread through the hall. Kayla's heart pounded, but it was not fear. It was the thrill of proving that humans were not weak creatures. They were dangerous, clever, resilient, and unpredictable, and she would make sure every alien in that room understood that. She inhaled slowly and exhaled, letting every thought sharpen into clarity. The moment of her first real test had arrived, and every step she had taken in her life had led her here. The laughter of alien cadets faded into the background as her instincts sharpened into focus, and she realized that humiliation was temporary, but human resolve was eternal, and the fire inside her had only begun to burn. Kayla spent the next few days in the academy's training chambers, where her every move was scrutinized by the alien cadets. They continued to underestimate her. They whispered behind her back, thinking she was nothing but a joke to be laughed at. But Kayla did not care for their mockery. It was fuel for the fire burning within her. The moment the general slapped her still burned in her memory. But now it was no longer a humiliation. It was a challenge, something she would rise above. She stayed in her quarters late into the night, training harder than ever before. She knew that in the eyes of the aliens she was weak, but she had learned the hard way that humans were anything but weak. They were survivors, and she would make them see that Kayla worked relentlessly, honing her speed, her reflexes, her strength. She practiced strikes and defensive maneuvers over and over again until her body ached. But it was a good kind of pain, the kind that came from pushing yourself to the limit and beyond. She knew that she needed to be faster, stronger than she had ever been before. Because when the moment came, she would need to act quickly and decisively. She was no longer simply training to survive, she was training to conquer, and to show the aliens that they had made a grave mistake by underestimating her. Humans had something the aliens did not. They had a drive that was unbreakable, a will that could not be broken, no matter how many times they were struck down. Kayla had learned that lesson on the death worlds where each day could be your last, and every fight was a battle for survival. She had faced creatures that could tear her apart with a single swipe, but she had always found a way to survive. She had learned to use her environment to her advantage, to think quickly to outsmart the enemy, and to never give up, no matter the odds. The next day in the training hall, General Vrax's cold eyes scanned the cadets as they lined up for their daily drills. Kayla could feel the weight of his gaze on her. She had no intention of backing down, but she could feel the tension between them. It was thick like an invisible wall standing between them. The general was waiting for her to make another mistake, and Kayla was determined to disappoint him this time. She stepped forward when it was her turn, and as she moved into position, the alien cadets watched her closely, their eyes filled with judgment and amusement as they waited for her to falter. But Kayla was ready. She was faster than she had ever been, her movements sharp and controlled. Her strikes were precise, and her footwork was flawless. She had spent every free moment perfecting her technique, and it showed. She could feel the energy of the room shifting. The aliens were no longer laughing at her. They were starting to watch with interest. They were beginning to see that Kayla was not like the other humans. They had thought her weak, but they were starting to realize she was something more, something dangerous. The general stood at the edge of the training ring, observing her every move. Kayla's heart raced, but she did not let the pressure break her. She blocked each strike with the fluidity of someone who had lived through endless battles, her body moving with the kind of grace that only came from constant training. The aliens had never seen anything like it. They expected her to falter, to hesitate, but instead, she moved with confidence. Each punch, each kick sent a message to the cadets and to the general. Kayla was not to be underestimated. The general's expression shifted. He was no longer just watching her. He was analyzing her, looking for any sign of weakness. But Kayla showed none. She kept her focus as her body moved through the drill, her breathing steady, her mind clear. She could hear the faint murmurs of the alien cadets around her, but she blocked them out. The only sound that mattered was the rhythmic beat of her own heart, and the sound of her strikes landing with precision. Each movement felt natural and instinctive. She had trained for this moment for her entire life, and she would not let it slip away from her. The drill came to an end, and Kayla stood tall, her chest rising and falling with the effort. She had pushed herself to the limit. But she had proven something to the aliens. She had shown them that humans were not weak. They were powerful, adaptable, and relentless, and she was just getting started. The aliens looked at each other, confused, uncertain about what they had just witnessed. Kayla met their gaze without a hint of fear. She was not afraid of them. She was ready for whatever came next. The general stepped forward, his expression unreadable. Kayla stood still, waiting for him to speak. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity, but finally he spoke, his voice low and cold. "You've surprised me, human," he said. "And that is something I rarely say." Kayla did not flinch. She simply nodded, but in her mind she knew that this was just the beginning. The real test was yet to come. The next day, Kayla stood in front of the Academy's vast training arena once again. But this time, the air felt different. The usual hum of alien voices was replaced with silence as cadets gathered around to witness something they never thought they'd see. A challenge had been issued. The Academy had decided to hold a demonstration where the cadets would show their skills in a one-on-one combat scenario against their mentors. The alien generals were known for their power and experience, but for Kayla, this was her chance to prove herself once and for all. Her heart pounded in her chest, but her expression remained stoic. She knew that this was more than just a test of skill. It was her moment to show the Academy that humanity was not to be underestimated. The aliens had thought of her as weak a mistake that Kayla had no intention of allowing to continue. She could feel the gazes of the other cadets on her, each one expecting her to fail. Kayla did not care about their expectations. She cared only about her own. Her hands were steady as she adjusted her uniform and focused on the task ahead. She was not here to make friends. She was here to prove something, that humanity was not just capable of surviving, but of dominating in ways the aliens could not imagine. The arena opened, and General Vrax's figure appeared at the far side. His tall form was imposing, his eyes locked on Kayla with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. He was a master of combat, a brutal tactician who had trained for centuries, and Kayla was nothing but a young human cadet to him. He expected her to crumble under the pressure and the weight of his reputation. He would learn just how wrong he was. Kayla stepped forward, her movements calm but purposeful. She could feel the eyes of every alien in the room on her. They were all waiting for the show they expected her to put on for them. But she had no intention of playing the part they wanted. She had trained for this her entire life. She was ready. The challenge began with a series of moves meant to test reflexes and combat tactics. Vrax wasted no time. He came at her fast, with precision and force, expecting her to falter, but Kayla was faster. She dodged his first strike with ease, her body moving like a shadow as she sidestepped his attack. Her own reflexes were a blur as she struck with speed that surprised even him. Her fist landed against his side with a thud. Powerful but calculated, Vrax grunted in surprise but quickly recovered. His attacks became more aggressive. His strikes aimed to overwhelm her. But Kayla remained calm. She had been taught to think, in the heat of battle, to remain focused even when everything seemed against her. She saw the openings in Vrax's attacks, the weaknesses in his movements. She was not fighting a general of legends. She was fighting a warrior who had become complacent, who thought he could defeat a human easily because of his reputation. But Kayla was not just any human. She had lived through trials that had shaped her mind and body. She had faced predators that would have torn an ordinary person apart, and yet, here she stood against one of the greatest generals in the galaxy, and she was not backing down. The aliens watching the battle began to murmur, their voices growing louder as they saw the unexpected happening. Kayla was holding her own against Vrax. She moved with an elegance that defied the harshness of the battle. And with every strike she delivered, she reminded the cadets that humans were more than capable of standing toe-to-toe with the strongest of them. Vrax's eyes narrowed as he adjusted his tactics. He was not used to being challenged in this way. His movements became more desperate, but Kayla kept up every step of the way. She moved like a dancer, avoiding his blows and delivering her own with precision and power that made every alien in the room take notice. She had the strength, but more importantly, she had the mind. She could outthink him. She could anticipate his next move before he made it. It was a skill the aliens lacked. Their strength was unmatched, but their predictability was their weakness. Kayla used that weakness to her advantage, striking with the perfect combination of speed and surprise. Finally, with one well-placed move, she flipped Vrax onto the ground with a loud crash. His armor rattled as he lay there, stunned for a moment. The room fell silent in shock. Vrax was the general, the undefeated champion of the Academy, and Kayla had just thrown him down in a matter of seconds. The alien cadets stared at her in disbelief. They had never seen anything like it. She had not only survived, she had dominated, and she had done it in a way that no one had expected. Kayla stood over him for a moment, her chest rising and falling with each breath. She did not smile, she did not gloat, she simply offered him a hand to help him up. Vrax hesitated for a moment before he accepted her offer and allowed her to pull him to his feet. His eyes were no longer filled with disdain or amusement. Now they were filled with something else. Respect. It was a small but powerful shift in the way he saw her. The aliens in the room had seen her as a weakling, just another human to be mocked and forgotten. But now they saw her for what she truly was, a force to be reckoned with. Kayla met Vrax's gaze calmly and said nothing. She did not need words to prove her point. The battle was over, and she had won. The challenge had been set, and Kayla had not only passed it but had shattered every expectation in the process. She had shown them that humans were not just survivors. They were predators, and no one was safe from their rise. The academy was different after that day. Kayla could feel the shift in the air. The cadets no longer mocked her. They no longer whispered behind her back. Instead, there was an uneasy respect in their gazes. Some of them even began to avoid her eye contact, perhaps fearful of what they had seen in her, something they hadn't expected from a human general. Vrax's humiliation at her hands had sent ripples through the academy, and Kayla was at the center of it. All the other cadets were talking about her. Her victory had not just been physical. It had been a mental blow to everything they thought they knew about humans. They thought her to be weak and fragile, but now they knew better. They had seen her fight with the skill and precision of someone far beyond her years, but Kayla did not dwell on their newfound respect. She didn't need it. She was here to prove herself to herself, not to anyone else. Her mind was set on the next challenge. The real test was still ahead. She had shown them she could fight. She had shown them she could survive. But the real test would be something much harder than mere combat. It would be a battle of minds, a trial of tactics that would push her to her limits. The next day she was summoned to the Academy's council chamber, where the highest-ranking officials of the Academy waited. Their eyes were cold and calculating as they surveyed her. The room was dimly lit, with long shadows stretching across the floor as if they were trying to trap her. They had watched the demonstration in the arena, and they had seen her potential, but they wanted more than just a show of physical strength. They wanted to know if she could truly handle what was to come. Kayla stood before them, her posture straight and unwavering. She did not show fear. She did not bow. She was ready for whatever challenge they would throw her way. The council spoke in a language she barely understood, but the meaning was clear. They were offering her a chance to prove herself in a different way, not with brute strength but with strategy, with intelligence. They wanted to test her mind, her ability to outsmart the best alien tacticians and generals in the Academy. A challenge where only the most brilliant minds survived. Kayla's heart raced, but her expression remained calm. The aliens had no idea that she had trained not only her body but also her mind. She had read countless texts on military strategy and tactics on the art of war from every corner of the galaxy. She had learned how to predict her enemies' moves, how to turn their own strengths against them, how to use every advantage she could find. She was not just a fighter, she was a strategist. Her mind was as sharp as any general's, and the aliens would soon find that out. Kayla accepted the challenge without hesitation, and the council smiled as if they had just caught her in a trap. They believed they knew her. They believed they knew what humans were capable of, and they were about to test her in ways they couldn't imagine. The challenge began with a simulation, a battle between fleets of warships, each under the command of a general. The Academy's computer system generated countless scenarios, each more complex than the last. Kayla was given control of a fleet of human-designed warships which, to the aliens, were primitive compared to their own advanced technology. They were too small, too slow, too weak. They thought she would fail. They thought she would buckle under the pressure. But they had no idea what humans were capable of. The battle began, and Kayla immediately dove into the task. She analyzed the data quickly, processing it faster than the system could generate it. Her mind raced through countless possibilities as she commanded her fleet with precision and calculation. She moved her ships strategically, setting up traps, creating diversions, and using the enemy's own mistakes against them. Her fleet was outnumbered, but she was not afraid. The aliens had underestimated her again. She knew how to fight with fewer resources and make every move count. Her mind was working faster than they could keep up with. She had always been taught that a soldier who could think would always beat one who only relied on strength. She understood the art of war in ways the aliens did not. She understood the importance of timing, the significance of misdirection, and the power of unpredictability. It wasn't long before Kayla's fleet began to dominate the simulation. One by one, the alien fleets were crippled by her cunning strategy. They couldn't understand how she was doing it. Her ships were outclassed in firepower and speed, but Kayla was using every advantage she could find to strike at the heart of their forces. The council members watched in stunned silence as Kayla's fleet tore through the simulation. Each move she made was a calculated risk, but every risk paid off. She had turned the battle in her favor, and now there was nothing the alien commanders could do to stop her. The simulation ended with a decisive victory for Kayla. Her fleet had defeated forces many times its size and power. The aliens in the council chamber looked at her with a mixture of disbelief and fear. They had thought humans were nothing but brute force. They had thought they could crush her under the weight of their superior technology, but they had underestimated her. Again, Kayla stood before them calm as ever. Her mind was still racing, but she showed no sign of exhaustion. She had won not with strength, but with the power of her mind. She had proven that humans were not just strong. They were clever, adaptable, and capable of outsmarting even the greatest minds in the galaxy. The council members were speechless for a moment, but Kayla could see the change in their eyes. They no longer saw her as a mere human. They saw her as a threat, an equal, an asset, to be reckoned with. The challenge was over and Kayla had won again. Her reputation was solidified, but for her, it was just another step forward in the journey to show the galaxy what humanity could really do. The days following Kayla's victory and the Council's challenge were filled with whispers, not of mockery, but of awe. The Academy was no longer the place it had been when she first arrived. The alien cadets who had once laughed at her every move now watched her with a mixture of respect and fear. They began to understand that the human cadet who had stood in front of General Vrax and shattered his arrogance was something entirely different from the fragile creature they had imagined. They could see now that Kayla wasn't just surviving, she was excelling. She had proven herself a fighter and a strategist. But that wasn't enough to silence her critics. There were those who still refused to accept the idea that a human could be better than them in any way. Some alien cadets, especially those from the warrior classes, continued to test her. They sought to prove that humans were nothing more than an anomaly that could be dismissed. They underestimated her again, but Kayla was patient. She knew that every challenge was an opportunity to show the galaxy that humanity had a place in this vast universe, and it wasn't as an underdog. She wasn't just fighting for herself now. She was fighting for every human who had been underestimated, every human who had been pushed aside by alien arrogance. The next challenge came in the form of a series of live combat simulations. The Academy had set up a series of obstacles, each more deadly than the last, designed to push the cadets to their physical and mental limits. Kayla was paired with one of the Academy's best combatants, a massive alien with thick scales and claws that could shred through steel. She was small compared to him, her human form far less imposing than his towering presence. But Kayla wasn't concerned with size or strength. She was concerned with strategy and speed. She entered the arena with nothing but a standard-issue combat suit and a bladed weapon. The alien who towered over her grinned. He had been watching her success, but he didn't believe she could match his raw power. He thought that her victories were nothing more than luck, but luck wouldn't save her today. Kayla sized him up as he advanced toward her, his massive claws swinging. She could see the arrogance. In his eyes, the belief that his size alone would be enough to defeat her. She ducked his first swipe, moving with the kind of speed and fluidity that made it look effortless. Her opponent's roar of frustration filled the air as he lunged again, this time with a powerful swipe aimed at her chest. Kayla sidestepped the strike, her body moving faster than his eyes could track. She moved behind him, striking quickly with the blade across his side, drawing a line of blood. He spun around in anger, but she was already on the move again. She wasn't just fighting to survive this time. She was fighting to show him that she was faster than he could ever hope to be. The battle continued, the alien growing more frustrated with every missed strike and every successful blow Kayla landed. He had the strength to tear her apart, but it was no use against her speed and cunning. She could see the cracks in his defense, the hesitation that came from his disbelief that a human could be so quick, so unpredictable. Each time he lunged, she was already gone, slipping past him with a perfect counterattack. The alien cadets watching from the observation decks were silent, now their faces filled with disbelief. They had never seen anything like this before. They had thought that sheer power would win the day, but they were witnessing the power of human agility and quick thinking. Kayla's mind raced. Calculating her next move, she had to be careful with every strike. Every decision was a risk, but it was a risk she was willing to take because she knew that this was the only way to show the galaxy that humans were not to be underestimated. Could see the alien's weariness. He was slowing down while she was still moving with precision and purpose. The time had come. Kayla feigned a misstep, drawing her opponent in, and when he took the bait, she leapt forward with a speed that left him no time to react. Her blade sliced through the air, striking his vulnerable side before he could raise his claws to defend himself. The alien's roar of pain echoed through the arena as he collapsed to the ground. Kayla stood over him, her chest heaving with exertion but her expression calm. Her heart pounded, but there was no triumph in her eyes. She wasn't interested in victory for the sake of victory. She was interested in proving something to the galaxy and to herself. She had shown them that it wasn't just strength that mattered. It was adaptability, it was intelligence, it was the ability to think and move when others were trapped in their own arrogance. She didn't need to overpower her opponent. She needed to outsmart him, and that's exactly what she had done. The alien cadets were no longer watching her with disdain. They were watching her with something new. Something that no human had ever seen from the alien forces before. Respect, fear. They now knew what Kayla was capable of, and they knew that no matter what they threw at her, she would keep coming. She would keep proving that humans were more than just a species to be looked down upon. They were a species to be feared, respected, and admired. Kayla walked off the arena floor, her head held high. The challenge was over, and once again she had emerged victorious, but this was just one step in a much larger journey. A journey to show the galaxy that humanity had a place among the stars, and no one would stand in their way. Kayla stood in the command center of the Academy's war simulation chambers, staring at the holographic map of the galaxy displayed before her. This was no ordinary simulation. It wasn't a test of strength or speed or agility. It was a test of human strategy and cunning against a vast alien war machine. The challenge was simple in theory, but nearly impossible in execution. She was tasked with leading a fleet of ships against a coalition of powerful alien species. Each fleet was heavily armed and technologically superior. Her ships were small, underpowered, and outgunned. Yet this was not a battle she could afford to lose. It wasn't just her reputation at stake, it was humanity's place in the stars. The room around her was quiet, filled with alien officers who were watching her every move. They had seen her victories before, but none of them expected her to stand a chance against this simulation. The aliens believed that their superior technology, their massive ships, and their experience in battle would easily crush her. They didn't realize that she had already mastered something they could never truly understand. Humans could think in ways no other species could. They could adapt, improvise, and outwit their enemies where others could only fight with brute force. Kayla ran her fingers over the controls, analyzing the data streaming in. She had studied the alien tactics, their patterns, their weaknesses. She knew that brute strength would not win this battle. She needed to outsmart them, outmaneuver them, and make them play by her rules. The first wave of alien ships appeared on her radar. They were enormous, their weapons glowing with power. The alien officers around her leaned forward, their eyes filled with anticipation. They expected her to panic. They expected her to make a mistake, but Kayla remained calm. Her mind was sharp, focused on the task at hand. She gave the order and her fleet of human ships surged forward, taking a position far from the alien forces. She had no intention of engaging directly. She would make them come to her. She knew that the larger the force, the slower it moved. The alien ships, while powerful, were cumbersome. They relied on their strength and numbers to overwhelm enemies, but Kayla knew that strategy could turn the tide. She activated the decoy ships, sending them out to draw the alien fleets toward a false position. The alien commanders immediately took the bait, sending their forces to intercept what they thought was an easy target. Kayla smiled to herself. The aliens had fallen right into her trap. The real human fleet moved quickly into position on the other side of the battlefield, using the asteroid field as cover. Her ships were small, agile, and fast. They could maneuver through the obstacles in ways the massive alien ships could not. Kayla's plan was simple but effective. She would use the terrain to her advantage and take down the alien fleets one by one. The first alien ship came into range. She gave the order to fire, and her fleet unleashed a barrage of missiles and laser fire. The alien ship's shields flared up, but they weren't enough to stop the attack. The ship was struck, its engines damaged, and it was forced to retreat. The aliens were stunned. They had never expected such a precise strike coming from the smaller human ships. The battle continued, but Kayla's fleet moved with efficiency, striking when and where the aliens least expected it. With every ship she destroyed, with every alien fleet that retreated, the odds seemed to shift in her favor. The alien officers were beginning to realize that they had underestimated her once again. They had expected to crush her fleet with ease, but now they were faced with a human commander who was using her brain. Instead of just her weapons, Kayla had turned the tide of battle, but she knew this was only the beginning. The aliens were not about to let her win so easily. They were regrouping, forming new strategies, and Kayla could see it in their eyes. The true challenge had only just begun. The alien fleet began to adapt to her tactics, countering her every move. They had grown more cautious, more strategic in their attacks. Kayla's mind raced as she considered her next move. She had to stay one step ahead of them. If they could counter her strategy, then she had to find a way to surprise them again. She studied the map carefully, and then gave the order for a full retreat. The alien commanders didn't hesitate to follow, thinking they had won the upper hand, but Kayla had no intention of retreating. She led her fleet into a narrow sector of the battlefield, a place where the enemy ships would be forced into a tight formation. It was a risk, but it was her best shot. The aliens followed, moving into position with the belief that they had her cornered. But Kayla had already predicted their move. She had set up a final trap, one that would destroy their chances of victory. She waited for the perfect moment, holding her breath. As the alien ships closed in, she activated her final weapon system, a concentrated ion blast that would destroy the alien ship's shields in a single strike. The aliens had no time to react before the blast hit. The shockwave was massive, tearing through their ships and breaking their formation into chaos. The remaining alien ships were easy targets for Kayla's fleet. They were outmaneuvered, outgunned, and outsmarted. In the end, it wasn't the size of her fleet or the power of her weapons that won the battle. It was her ability to think, to adapt, and to make her enemies play by her rules. Kayla's victory was absolute. The alien officers stood in stunned silence as the holographic battlefield faded away. They had never seen anything like it before. A human had outsmarted them at their own game. They had no words. They could only stare at the young human cadet who had just shown them that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. Kayla stood in the command center, her expression calm, but inside she felt a surge of triumph. This was her moment. The Academy had tested her time and again, and she had proven them all wrong. They had thought of her as weak, but she had shown them that humans were not to be dismissed. The galaxy was beginning to see the truth. Humans were not just survivors, they were conquerors. The Academy was buzzing with activity, yet there was a stillness in the air, an unease that lingered. Kayla stood at the center of it all, but this time, it wasn't the eyes of alien cadets or generals that followed her every move. It was the eyes of those who had once dismissed her as weak. They now regarded her with a mixture of fear and respect that was impossible to ignore. She had done what no one thought possible. The last challenge had pushed her to the limits of what any human had ever been asked to do on this grand stage, and she had succeeded in ways even the most arrogant of alien generals hadn't expected. The final test, however, wasn't one she had prepared for. It wasn't a battle or a strategy game. It was the culmination of all the battles she had fought within the academy. A test to see if she could remain calm, poised, and unshaken by the weight of everything that had come before. The aliens had seen her strength, her mind, and now they were going to test something far deeper. General Vrax, who had once underestimated her so completely, now stood before her with a different expression. Gone was the smirk, the mocking attitude. Instead, his face was cold, serious, almost respectful. His eyes bore into hers, and for a long moment he said nothing. The silence between them was thick, filled with the gravity of everything that had led to this moment. "You have surprised us all, Kyla," he finally said, his voice low and measured. "No human has ever accomplished what you have here. You've beaten our best, outsmarted our generals, and survived every test we've thrown at you. You've earned more than our respect. You've earned our fear." Kayla met his gaze calmly, her hands at her sides. She wasn't here to gloat, to show off. She was here because she had a purpose. Humanity had always been underestimated, but now she stood as proof that it was time for the galaxy to change its views. She hadn't just survived. She had thrived. "You have proven yourself, Kayla," Vrax continued, his voice steady, though there was a hint of something else, uncertainty. "But there is one thing that remains, something that has never been tested. Not by you, and certainly not by any of us." Kayla didn't flinch. She had faced so many challenges already. If this was to be another, she would face it the same way. Vrax took a step back, his gaze intense. "We are about to test you one final time. Not with weapons, not with tactics, but with humanity's greatest weapon, the power of influence, the power of leadership. You will stand before the Council of Galactic Leaders and speak for your kind. You will convince them that humanity deserves a place in this galaxy as more than a mere afterthought." Kayla's heart did not race, it steadied. Leadership. It wasn't about the battles fought or the wars won. It was about diplomacy, understanding, and persuasion. It was about proving that humans were not just capable of winning wars, but of bringing about peace on their terms, where their place in the galaxy was not just tolerated but respected. The room was silent when she entered the council chamber, a vast space with holographic projections of planets, ships, and star systems. Alien representatives from all corners of the galaxy sat in rows, their eyes fixed on her. Some regarded her with curiosity, others with disdain, but all were waiting silently for her to speak. Kayla took a deep breath. Her mind, sharp from years of survival, of learning, of adapting, now shifted into a new mode. The physical battles were over. The real fight was ahead. "I stand before you as proof," Kayla began, her voice calm but unwavering, "that humanity is not the weak species you think it is. We are not just survivors. We are innovators, strategists, and fighters. We have proven time and again that we can adapt to anything the universe throws at us. But we are more than that." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the room. "We do not simply fight for survival. We fight to build, to create, to forge alliances and seek peace. We fight to stand shoulder to shoulder with those who seek a future that isn't defined by conquest, but by collaboration. We are not here to take over. We are here to show you that a galaxy united is a galaxy that thrives, and humanity wants to be a part of that future." The council was silent, and for a moment, Kayla wondered if they would laugh at her once again. But they did not. They listened, they heard her words, and they saw the conviction in her eyes. "You will see that humanity does not just have the strength to survive," she continued, "but the strength to lead, to influence, to build something better. We may be young in this galaxy, but we are growing, evolving, and we are not asking for your pity. We are asking for your partnership. And I ask this not just as a cadet, but as a representative of humanity. Give us the chance to prove that we are worthy of a place at the table, not just as your allies, but as equals." The room remained quiet for what felt like an eternity, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Then, slowly, One by one, the alien leaders stood. They didn't speak at first, but their movements, their gestures, spoke volumes. And then, General Vrack spoke once more, his voice softer than before, but filled with something that Kayla had not expected. Approval. "You have shown us, Kayla, that humans are not to be underestimated," he said. "You have shown us that there is strength in your species, strength in your mind, in your will, and in your heart. We will give humanity the chance to prove itself not just as warriors, but as leaders. You have earned it." The room erupted into applause, a sound that Kayla had never expected to hear from the very beings who had once seen her kind as weak, as inferior. She had won more than a battle. She had won a place for humanity in the galaxy. And with that, her journey was far from over. It had only just begun. The future was uncertain, but Kayla stood tall, knowing that humanity's greatest weapon had always been its will to never give up. Kayla stood alone in the council chamber, staring out into the vast expanse of space beyond the transparent walls of the academy. The stars seemed to shimmer, as if reflecting the weight of what had just transpired. It was over the tests, the challenges, the expectations placed upon her. She had stood against them all and emerged victorious. But this victory wasn't just her own. It was the victory of every human who had ever been overlooked, dismissed, or underestimated. They had all stood with her in spirit, and now they had a place. In the galaxy. They had a voice. Kayla's heart still pounded, but there was no fear in it, only the steady beat of determination. Her journey had begun in the shadow of mockery and doubt, but it had ended in something far greater. She had proven herself, in ways that no one had imagined possible. She had shown the galaxy that humans were more than just survivors. They were leaders, thinkers, warriors, and so much more. The doors of the council chamber opened behind her, and she turned to face the alien representatives who had gathered to hear her speak. They had accepted her words. They had seen her strength, and now they understood humanity. They understood that humanity was not just a force to be reckoned with. It was a force that would shape the future. The alien generals who had once laughed at her now stood in respectful silence. The cadets who had once mocked her now looked to her with admiration and awe. Kayla could feel the change within them. The respect they now had for her was not just for her skill or strength. It was for her spirit, the spirit that all humans shared, the spirit that refused to back down in the face of adversity, the spirit that would push humanity forward no matter the cost. In that moment, Kayla knew that this was just the beginning. The battles were not over, but the path ahead was clearer than it had ever been. Humanity had earned its place at the table, but they had not come to sit idly by. They had come to lead, to grow, to shape the galaxy into something greater. And Kayla was proud to be part of that legacy. The Academy's halls now seemed quieter than they had ever been, but Kayla knew that the silence wasn't one of defeat. It was the quiet before the storm, the calm before humanity took its rightful place as a force for change in the galaxy. She could feel it in the air. The change was coming. It was time to build alliances to unite the galaxy, to show everyone that humanity wasn't just a passing thought, but a permanent fixture in the cosmos. As Kayla walked through the halls of the Academy, she no longer saw herself as just a cadet. She saw herself as the first of many, the one who had paved the way for humanity's future in the stars. She was no longer an outsider, no longer someone to be dismissed, no longer just a human. She was a leader, a representative of her species, and the galaxy would know the name of humanity from now on. It would echo through the stars for as long as humanity stood ready to fight, to thrive, to become something far greater than it had ever been. The end.